Welcome to another installment of Deconstructing Babylon, where we discern the signs and symbols of the mystery religion of Hollywood Babylon. I'm the Discerning Clerk, and I use a biblical framework to deconstruct movies from the 90s. Buckle up, because this one could be your favorite. Right off the bat, I want to thank you for 50 subscribers. I know what I say isn't easy to hear, and I appreciate you all being here. My Cousin Vinny was released in 1992, back when I was still a child, and the profanity-laced courtroom comedy became a lasting family favorite. Marissa Tomei won an Oscar for her supporting role in this, and even the Video Movie Guide rates it a high 4 stars. A fledgling Brooklyn lawyer attempts to free his cousin, who has been arrested on a murder charge in backward Wazoo City, Alabama. It's a movie you won't want to miss. Joe Pesci is terrific, and so is Marissa Tomei as his gum-popping fiancé. Now, despite the thoroughness of our trusted analog paperback, I always visit IMDb for a more thorough take, which doesn't always agree with the writers from 25 years ago. The book tells us it was released in 1991, not 92, and IMDb only gives it a G rating as opposed to the R rating from the guide. I won't bury the lead, but I want to preface this first with a bit of my own understanding of the symbolism. In the Old Testament, before Israel had a human king to lead them, they had judges. These were not priests, but were prophets that heard from Yahweh directly and were arbiters of his law among his people. Well-known judges include Gideon, Deborah, and Samson. It is my opinion that the symbolism of a lawyer in Babylon storytelling points to a counterfeit or mockery of the Old Testament judges. Let's see how this one is portrayed in My Cousin Vinny. The first image is a long and winding road, empty save for one vehicle, a convertible driving towards us. The license plate says New York and features an image of one of their monuments, the Statue of Liberty. Much can be said about this copper gift from France, but I will only say this. The icon of Western freedom wears shackles and chains around its feet. The convertible is driven by our two would-be defendants, Bill Gambini and Stan Rothenstein from New York, into Alabama, which is a far cry from New York. They pull into a convenience store, and they have no idea their lives are about to change.
One burrito and one large slush.
That sack of suds is a Dollar General now, probably.
Jesus. Look, I forgot to pay for this.
Does that count as a confession? The boys from the north are then violently pulled over by a local sheriff's deputy.
Show me your hands!
And fingered in the lineup for the gunshot murder of the clerk at the sack of suds, though they mistakenly believe they are only in for shoplifting.
I shot the clerk.
Yes, when did you shoot him?
I shot the clerk.
Now this one does count as a confession.
Do you know any great attorneys?
They learn that Bill's cousin, Vinny, is a practicing lawyer and is willing to represent the boys pro bono. So Vinny drives to Alabama with his fiancée, Mona Lisa Vito, to defend the boys. We know the 90s misogyny has to rear its ugly head somehow. Here it's in the casting and the 22-year age difference between Marissa Tomei, who was 27 at the time, and Joe Pesci, who was 49.
You stick out like a sore thumb around here.
Me? What about you?
Vinny sits down with his clients, who are being held at a federal prison for their trial. They should be working on their defense, and Vinny should be asking them questions, but he's never done this before.
Well, actually, this would be my first foray into the trial process.
Stan is very nervous to have such an inexperienced litigator defend his very life, and I don't really blame him. Vinny meets the judge in his chambers. This was Fred Gwynn's final role before he died, and while he's most remembered as Herman Munster, I will forever remember him as Judge Chamberlain Haller.
This is not the forum to be cavalier.
The imposing man intimidates Vinny to the point that he fabricates his entire legal career, just hoping to impress him.
I advise you, sir, when you come into my courtroom, you ought to know the letter of the law. I'll react harshly when you don't.
For a guy who recently passed the bar exam, he should be very well versed in the law. The judge gives him a book to read, but Vinny struggles to understand it, much like most of his unfamiliar surroundings.
You never heard of grits?
At the preliminary hearing, Vinny enters their plea, meets the prosecutor, Jim, and gets arrested for contempt of court. He didn't get very far in the law book, and it shows. Judge Haller warned him that he would react harshly if Vinny wasn't correctly prepared. This whole scenario reminds me of the most holy place in the temple for Yahweh. The high priest would enter the most holy place once a year for burnt offering on the altar to the Lord. And if the priest wasn't properly cleansed according to the law, he would drop dead from God's holy presence. They would even tie a rope around the waist of the high priest to pull his body out if he did die.
If I hear anything other than guilty or not guilty, you'll be in contempt.
The boys are separated from the general population and they discuss the case together. Stan shares that he is less than confident in Vinny's abilities to give them a good defense and suggests they go with the public defender. But Bill convinces Stan to stay with Vinny.
If you will look in the manual, you will see that this particular model faucet requires a range of 10 to 16 foot-pounds of torque. I routinely twist to maximum allowable torquage.
I'm not sorry about that. She's wonderful.
Because I used a Craftsman model 1019 Laboratory Edition Signature Series torque wrench, the kind used by Caltech high-energy physicists.
Prosecutors present 3 witnesses and the suspect's own confession at the preliminary hearing as sufficient evidence to go to a jury trial, and Vinny is finally humbled in his own lack of expertise and knowledge of the law.
I'm really scared.
His faith isn't necessarily in himself or in the system, but in the truth prevailing and righteous justice taking place. The boys have less faith in the truth and more in the system that would set them free. Stan decides to go with the more experienced public defender for his defense, but Bill is convinced to stay with Vinny.
'Cause you're innocent.
There's also this underlying belief that the Alabama justice system isn't just inept and unsophisticated, but is actually wickedly corrupt. So Vinny meets up with Jim, the prosecutor, in order to exploit his corruption and gain some information.
Imagine you're a deer. You're prancing along, you get thirsty, you spot a little brook, you put your little deer lips down to the cool, clear water. Bam! A fucking bullet rips off part of your head. Your brains are laying on the ground in little bloody pieces. Now I ask you, would you give a fuck what kind of pants the son of a bitch who shot you was wearing?
Ms. Mona Lisa Vito, ladies and gentlemen. But Bambi is safe because Jim isn't corrupt and will, of course, disclose all his evidence and witness list to the defense team. Vinny credits truth prevailing for this miraculous break in the case when he should have known all along that disclosure was required by law.
They didn't teach you that in law school either?
Jury selection goes rather quickly when other courtroom movies portray this process taking several days or even longer. And it's also an area where legal expertise is required. Meanwhile, Judge Haller checks up on Vinny's credentials, and Vinny must continue to lie to cover up more lies. This time he gives a different name to the judge that should buy him some time.
Jerry Gallo, the big attorney.
That would be like if Vinny claimed to be Robert Kardashian or Johnny Cochran. So Vinny and Lisa keep moving around the county in order to get a good night's sleep. Between trains and pigs, whistles, and owls, they can't get more than a few hours each night.
Well, I hate to bring it up because I know you got enough pressure on you already. But we agreed to get married as soon as you won your first case. Meanwhile, 10 years later, my niece, the daughter of my sister, is getting married. My biological clock is ticking like this. And the way this case is going, I ain't never getting married.
This is a comedy after all, and Joe Pesci is pretty good at the physical comedy that's required for the role, despite being known for his tough guy roles.
But I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
He's even willing to look foolish in order to be obedient to the judge's orders.
So I wore this ridiculous thing for you.
Many times in the Old Testament, the prophets of the Lord were often asked by Yahweh to do something that made them look foolish or even shameful. The trial gets going rather quickly, and Jim gives an impassioned opening statement about evidence and truth.
Truth. That's what verdict means.
Vinny makes an impression of a different nature, and the public defender has about all the eloquence of the diner grits.
We intend to prove that the
state's case is built entirely on the witness testimonies and their positive identification of not just the defendants, but their very specific vehicle. Typically, eyewitnesses are the least reliable for getting the truth. and Vinny easily pokes holes in their statements, not because they're lying or are corrupt, but because the truth is the boys didn't do it.
I did say that. Would you say that?
He finally gets a win in court, and Stan responds by firing the stuttering public defender. Vinny is arrested for contempt again, and instead of getting bailed out, he submits himself to the consequence that the law prescribes and finally gets the rest he's been seeking. He continues to disprove the prosecution's witnesses, but there is still a matter of the vehicle, the green convertible.
Identical.
And Vinny must also face the lies he's told, but he doesn't. He just tells more lies.
Well, I'm not Jerry Gallo. I'm Jerry Callow.
Remember, kids, this was before the internet. He couldn't just look it up. Even the analog pictures that Lisa has printed are indicative of the times. The story wouldn't work the same today. So the clock is now ticking on the case, and Vinny's career could be over just as it's starting to show some good fruit.
Please, I only have 3 minutes.
Vinny finally sees how Lisa can help him on the case, and it's her expertise about vehicles in general.
Watch this.
Because Chevy didn't make a 327 in 55. The 327 didn't come out till 62. And it wasn't offered in the Bel Air with a 4-barrel carb till 64. However, in 1964, the correct ignition timing would be 4 degrees before top dead center.
Lisa goes on to correctly answer all of Vinny's questions, which disproves the belief that the cars were identical. But this was information that Vinny came to himself, and if Lisa wasn't there to testify, he could have easily led the prosecution's expert witness to the same conclusions.
In the 60s, there were only 2 other cars made in America that had positive traction and independent rear suspension and enough power to make these marks. One was the Corvette, which could never be confused with the Buick Skylark. The other had the same body length, height, width, weight, wheelbase, and wheel track as the 64 Skylark, and that was the 1963 Pontiac Tempest.
Then the sheriff comes in to confirm the other vehicle, and the driver's being arrested in another state with the murder weapon. The boys win their freedom, Vinny wins his first case, and even manages to get away with the lies he told the judge.
You're one hell of a trial lawyer.
They discuss a wedding as they drive off, with the end credits rolling over a mirrored image from the first image we saw. A long winding road, empty save for one vehicle, a convertible driving away from us. Before we started, I said I believe that cinematic lawyers represent the Old Testament judges. The judges were over the United Nation of Israel for hundreds of years. Only 3 generations of kings were over the United Nation before it was split into northern and southern tribes. The northern tribe was called Israel and was the larger, more rebellious nation. They had more evil kings throughout the generations, and the nation never recovered after exile. The southern tribe was called Judah, and from it came the nation called Jews. They had good kings that kept the nation faithful to Yahweh, and the remnant survived to bring about the Messiah, called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So I believe Vinny represents a prophet from the northern kingdom, and he travels to the southern kingdom to learn the law. He's a wonderful representation of the law being written on our hearts because he has faith in truth prevailing, but he has still much to learn about the very law to which he needs to yield. The fact that he lies to the judge and gets away with it is proof he has a long way to go. Judge Chamberlain Heller is a lovely representation of Yahweh with his strict adherence to the law and its practices, but it doesn't cloud him from seeing truth and showing mercy. Though he's fooled by the northern lawyer as proof that we're still in Babylon, they wouldn't dare show us God as he truly is. Mona Lisa is, as her name suggests, a priceless work of art. Her role otherwise greatly points to the first role that God gave to his creation, woman, helper. Men need help, amen? Lisa always wants to help, and she does marvelously well when she gets into the law herself and guides Vinny into the same knowledge.
Do me a favor, okay? Don't read this book. Okay? Thank you very much.
He resists her knowing the law, but it's helpful to him in the end. Ladies, it's helpful to our husbands when we know God's word well. Finally, the symbolism of the open road that started and finished the film indicate journey. In the Bible, as in life, things happen on the road. Thank you so much for enduring to the end. Thank you for 50 subscribers. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it and a thumbs down if you didn't. Subscribe if you want to, but don't follow me. Follow the one who saves you. And until next time, keep looking up.
Don't don't shake your head. I'm not done yet. Wait till you hear the whole thing. So you can understand this now.